birthday. Uh, just the fact that, you know, people want to say that they're related to Treg is a win.
He must be buying.
That's probably it. He's got a heart of oak, I'm telling you. Heart of
Yeah,
oak.
yeah. See what you did there.
Uh, yeah. All right. So yeah, here we are. It's as we record, it's Friday, the 22nd of November. Uh, Canadians haven't played a game in a few days. I'm sure everyone's just kind of twitching and itching for the next game, which is Saturday night against Vegas. But before we get to that, we'll just start off with the Canadians' last few games and how that's looked for them. So they started off last week with a loss against Minnesota. They lost 3-0. Um, but the thing is, they looked actually pretty good, like probably the best they looked up to that point in the season. But it was a loss. Then they showed up in Montreal a few days later, played against Columbus, and beat the living shit out of them on the scoreboard, but not on the advanced statistics. So both the Minnesota and the Columbus game, Canadians were behind in the possession stats. Then they played the Oilers, a team where you would think, surely the Oilers with McDavid and Draisaitl would destroy the Canadiens possession wise, and the opposite was true. It's actually won that game 3-0 and dominated the possession stats. So what the hell? Why are they toying with our emotions? The Canadians suck one day, are awesome the next. Then they give us a week where they actually play well. Like what the hell? What's going on?
Well, again, you brought up the Minnesota game, and the eye test would say that they were in that game more than what they should have been, and they shut down some very good players, and even the pucks that went in on that game with an empty netter say that Primo or Montembeault didn't have very much chance. Let's just say that. Um, you fast forward to the Columbus game, you're on home ice, and you give the fans something to cheer about. You pot five, everyone goes home, gets some wings, is happy. We saw some good things from a lot of we saw some good things from some core players, and we saw some of the depth guys jump in, especially in the third period with I believe it was Condata, Anderson, and Evans all scored, which is what you want to see. You just don't want to see the top guys do it. However, you want to see the top guys take that next step. Is this is what this season's for? Um, however, it was the Edmonton game that was kind of all right. What are we going to get ourselves into? We're going against Edmonton. We're going against McDavid. We're going against Drysdale. They're an offensive team. They're just going to put the pucks on the net. They're just going to just destroy this team. And it was the opposite. Montreal played a really good game overall, and it was some of the I'm going to say it was some of the depth, some of the leadership on the team, some of the future leadership of the team that stepped up. Gallagher got his eighth of the year. Gooley got his second of the year, and then Evans hit the empty net with that kind of that floater from almost 200 feet away.
Yeah.
Um, but the main thing that I kind of took out of that game was Drysdale was a -3. Bouchard was a -3. Hyman was a -2. McDavid was a -2. Hyman got stood up at the blue line or got stood up at center ice by Jack Guy.
Which I
And
think was the turning point in that game,
what you know
honestly.
what that was towards the end of the period, and you got to think that the guys went into the locker room and were like, okay, we're in this game, we got this. Montembeault played very well in that game, made some key saves, picked up a second shutout of the year. So it's funny, like his two shutouts this year are against quite potent offenses. One, obviously, he made many more saves than the other, but it's good for his confidence as we get closer to selection for the Four Nations tournament. You're putting up shutouts against the Edmonton Oilers. You know, maybe you're squeaking in, and you are going to get a spot in the lineup.
Yeah. And in that game, actually, just looking at the advanced stats at even strength, even though Columbus controlled the game according to the Corsi and even the expected goals for, Uh, Overall, the Canadians' better players, a lot of the Canadians' better players actually stepped up. So Suzuki had nearly 60% in the Corsi range, uh, but he was sub 500 in the faceoffs, which doesn't help. Uh, you look up and down the lineup, there's about 8 guys that were 50% or better in the possession. And the one leading the way is not exactly who you'd think off the top of your head, but makes sense. Josh Anderson, against his former team, led the way when it came to Corsi, and it showed. Like the eye test matches these advanced stats. He threw 4 hits. He was up and down the ice. He was everywhere. He was engaged.
Josh Anderson is slowly putting together a pretty solid season, playing in an area that is better suited for where he is right now in his career.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to play the top six role. He's getting some better matchups, but at the same time, he's going out there and he's doing what he has to do, and it's working for him. He's going back to he still isn't getting in as much as I'd like to see him on the physical side of it, on the forecheck, but he still has his game where he does do so.
Yeah.
But he is using his speed, he is going to the net, he's using his shot a little bit more, and he's creating opportunities. And we know that if need be, he will be and has jumped in this season and dropped the gloves. He did so with a very tough customer in Tom Wilson and definitely held his own.
Yeah, yeah, he did.
So you don't want to see that from him all the time because you don't want to see him get injured, of course. But this has been statistically and through the eye test, which I always like to go for more than
Yeah.
advanced stats, is kind of a it's a refreshing sight to see some of these guys that so many people were speaking negative on, mainly Josh Anderson, Brendan Gallagher, step up into this new role and they're flourishing.
Well, here's the thing. They're on the line with Dvorak. It's a lot of money for a third line. Like
It
it's a
is, of course it
ridiculous
is.
amount of money. But you got a good point. Gallagher is actually playing to what he used to be. It's like a
Yes,
resurgence. He's on pace for 35 goals. Like
which is insane.
what the hell?
Yeah,
And Anderson has gone back to what his strengths were, which was just simple hockey, up and down the ice, north south with speed, a forecheck, throwing hits, going to the net, just shooting at, just constantly shooting, and it's working for him. He's producing. Dvorak, well, it's taken a little bit more time in the face-off circle as well, and it's starting to turn around. Uh, but it's the players like Kirby Doc is still having a bit of a hard time, even though he started to look pretty good last week compared to previous weeks. Um, he's still frustrated. It's clear he's still frustrated because he's not producing, but he played well enough, at least in the supporting role. Alex Newhook, another player who against the Edmonton Oilers was incredible. I mean, you play a team like the Oilers who are built to play with speed. Newhook, that's his element, and it showed. He had a great game, even though he may not have done a ton off. Like he didn't produce as many points as you would hope, but damn, he actually played really really well. And Suzuki shutting down the best player in the NHL. That's nothing to sneeze at. He played 21 minutes, and there were times when you could swear you could see uh, McDavid just mouthing to his coach, "Don't put me out there with him. Don't put me out there
right,
with him."
right. Um, I know we're going to be getting into some returning players soon. So do you
Yeah.
want to just jump? Do you want to actually just want to jump into that right now?
Um, Yeah, sure. Like, so clearly this week, the last few games, actually, the Canadiens are 3-0-2, well, 3-2-0 in their last 5 games. In the last three, they've actually really shown up well. But as you mentioned, there's going to be some changes coming up because uh, RHP is back. He is doing a conditioning stint in Laval, so he's got a couple of weeks down in Laval to get a few games in and get his game shape back up to NHL standards. And Laine is skating with the team right now in non-contact jersey, but this just shows that he is probably within a couple of weeks. So both players within the next couple of weeks are likely to make their NHL return this season. So that begs the question: who's moved out to make space because they're on the LTIR right now?
The easy decision would be just to send Kandada back and give their captain back. But I do find that he's playing the role of fourth line center not so
He
bad
has.
right now. And he's given some energy to that line and some much needed size
Yeah.
to a line of he, Armia, and Emil Heineman. And they're starting to get a little bit of an identity on their fourth line, which is what you like to see.
Yes.
Um, I don't see Heineman being a guy that's sent down because he's going to have to be put on waivers. And I do believe with how he's been playing, I think he would
He
be
deserves
picked
to
up,
stay.
right? I think he would be picked up. Um, what I can likely see is Kandada's going to be one of them.
Possibly, yeah.
And then do we see somebody like Pizzetta get put on waivers?
See, and that's another player that, yeah, he hasn't played very much this season, but if he is put
But
on waivers, I fully expect him to
yeah,
be taken.
because he is, and like, it's kind of surprised me that he's only played 3 games
Yeah.
because I thought that during the preseason he actually looked pretty good. And you have a guy that brings that amount of energy, that gets in on the forecheck, that just hits anything that moves for a team that is lacking that within their lineup and kind of lacking that energy and sometimes kind of lacking um, that oomph, I guess you're going to call it, when they need it in a game. To
Uh-huh.
only play 3 out of 19 games so far is a little bit surprising.
So one of the two are going to have to go, either Kandada or Pizzetta, because if both RHP and Laine are back, the Canadians have 22 roster positions. So one of them will fill the empty
Yeah.
slot, but there's another one that has to be
Yeah.
moved. So
I personally think
yeah.
it'll be Kandada.
Um, it because of the way he's played at center on that fourth line, it's very
I
difficult.
understand, but I don't think that I don't think they're gonna want to lose Pizzetta.
So who do they move on? Sorry, who plays uh fourth line center?
It's hard to say.
Do they move this would be a lot simpler if Doc were playing to what we know he could,
Yeah,
and he would just step in that second line role.
he's gonna have to soon.
Well, it,
He's gonna
it
have to soon. And a guy
yeah,
like I brought up changing the subject to this just to bring up some of these points.
yeah,
We talked about Newhook.
hmm
Okay, Newhook is almost the entire season played in the top 6 role.
yes.
He has 4 goals on the season. That's it. Not an assist. A guy that is known for his speed, transition game, everything like that, has not got a single assist in 19 games.
My question on that is, has he been that bad, or has the chances just not gone his way? Is he generating opportunities?
Most of the season, he can't hit an open net. He's got what Josh Anderson had last year.
The opportunities are there, but he's not burying them, and the passes he's making are quite perfect enough, or whatever it
But
is. But
like,
the chances are
if
there.
if if you were to tell me who comes out of the top 6 when Laine comes back, 100% is Newhook. But
Well, see, I'm
right,
not arguing that part.
but what I screw with what I screw with some successful lines at the moment to appease a guy like Newhook? No, I wouldn't.
No, 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 no. I'm not saying that he should for sure stay on that top six wing, but is he in with Doc not playing the way we want him to, or the team wants him to, or even he wants to? Does Newhook step into that second line role so that Jake Evans can move down?
Newhook, Jake Evans is playing better than Newhook right now.
Jake Evans is playing better than most people right now.
Jake Evans is arguably Montreal's number 2 right now, and he's playing like it. And I know he is playing above expectation. And is this
Mhm.
going to be something that's going to be You don't want to see this continue, but they're playing it because Kirby Dach cannot play his position. He cannot play the
Yes,
position that the Montreal Canadiens traded for to get him. They want him to
exactly.
be the second line center. He is not proving he can be that. So all of a sudden you have a fourth line center who is now out playing Christian Dvorak, and he's overplaying a center that you paid a first round pick to get, who you're now having to, I'm not going to say bring down a line, but essentially you are, just to try to wake this guy up. And after a while, you're going to have to feed this guy kind of a humble sandwich and be like, look, get your shit together because we're getting healthy. We've got other bodies coming in. We need you to play this role. And if you don't, somebody else will.
Now,
Because when we looked at the start of the year, Patrick
mhm,
Laine was pretty much penned in next to Kirby Dach on a second line, and the argument was who's playing with them. Is it Joshua Waugh? Is it Josh Anderson? Is it Armia? Is it Newhook, etc.? Now it's, well, who's going to play on that second line as a whole, as opposed to what's going on with Lining.
well, see, the thing with Doc is, as much as there's everyone's a little disappointed in his play thus far, it hasn't been all, you know, clouds and, acid rain and tears. He's had good moments, and I mean, he's got 8 points in the 19 games, so it's almost a point, half a point per game. But most of those are on the power play. He is still playing physical. He's still up there with hits. So it's not like he's just disappeared. It just doesn't seem like he's got the same jump in his step as he had before. And judging by the injury he suffered last year, it's not surprising, but it is disappointing that he can't step into that role. And because of that, it it, it has a trickle down effect where we have to rely on Evans to play at the second line, and Dvorak, who's not playing up to the expectations either, can't move up either, and moving him down might actually make sense, but you don't want to ruin the chemistry on that line with two guys on the wing who are doing really well. Then you look at that fourth line, Kandada's playing okay, pretty good, and that's where you would rather Jake Evans be, because that line with Evans would, I think, would pop. If only, if only Doc or Newhook could play center.
And that's your problem is you have
Yeah,
two guys that can play center that were drafted as centers who everyone thought were going to be centers. Maybe Newhook a little bit less just based on his,
yeah,
just based
his
on
size.
his size. He still has a solid foundation. Like he's not like 120 pound he's not like 120 pounds. He's
Yeah,
almost, he's bigger than what you think. Um, but it's the point production and the
yeah.
inability to
Right
win
now, yeah,
faceoffs and the inability to start
that's
with
a big one.
possession. Right, their other two
Yeah,
centers above them in Evans and Evans at almost is at 48.9, but he's taking a hell of a lot more faceoffs than what he should be. And Dvorak's at 51.4. So,
which, to be honest, for him to be that high now is impressive considering he started at nearly zero.
right.
So right now, the Canadiens lines, we're talking about center, so it's Suzuki, Evans, Dvorak, and Kundata. That's the four centers in order. For Laine to fit back into the lineup, somebody at wing is going to have to move. And, Newhook move down, sure. Or you could reunite the Slavkovsky Suzuki Caulfield line, put Laine on his off wing with Newhook. But right now, it's Evans. Now, it would be more ideal had it been Doc playing center, or at the very least, the two of them kind of, I don't know, find a way to have them both cover, like one of them do a face off, the other one play the center role
Right.
once the play is started. if you can get Newhook, Doc, and Laine together, that would be a much better offensive line,
It
and
would
there'd be
be,
more
but
size,
again,
speed.
who plays center, who can be consistent, who
Exactly,
can win the draws,
exactly.
and I would not be putting Laine in as off. So I want to put when Laine gets back, I want him to be in the most comfortable
Opportune.
position
Yeah,
that he can be in, so he doesn't have to um play play an area that he's not suited to be just based
yeah.
on team needs.
Ideally, you'd want him to have someone who's a puck retrieval type of player
Right,
on his line. So Slavkovsky would be ideal, but you don't want Laine going against top defenders either. His
right.
first game back in nearly a full calendar year. Uh, a second line role, sure. But then we were talking about Doc and Newhook, maybe even Evans on that line with them.
Right.
None of them are puck retrieval. Well, Doc could be a puck retrieval guy if he's on the wing. That's the
What if
only way I
you
could see that work.
and I get what you're saying there. If you want to have a puck retrieval guy and you want to have someone that's going to be I'm not suggesting this, but I'll bring it up for sake of argument. What about putting those two big guys up with Suzuki and have Slafkovsky with Laine and Suzuki, and then rock paper scissors Rochambeau, whatever you want to do for the second line center position, and have Caulfield, Newhook, and Doc,
I mean, that's doable, but
right?
again, that goes back to I don't want to see Line A exposed on a top line for his first game
Again,
back in like
I don't want to see it either,
almost a
but
year.
I also don't want to see him get exposed on a line that can't possess the puck or they can't win a faceoff or that are still looking for who their identity is as a player position wise, let alone got two guys that aren't putting the puck in the net.
Which is probably why I think that we're going to see Caulfield return to the Suzuki line with
I think
Slavkovsky.
so.
Um, Line A is going to be on that second line, probably on his off wing with Evans at center because they don't want to mix it up too much. That's where the whole who plays on that other wing. Is it going to be Newhook? Is it going to be Doc?
Gonna be one of the
Maybe
two.
even Emil Heineman,
I doubt it. I doubt it. It's gonna be one of those two. I don't think they're gonna dig into their bag of into their bag of tricks too much on that one. It's gonna be one of those two. It's gonna be one of those supposed to be center players playing on that wing.
and so now
Or you never know.
if it's
You might see something and you might see
yeah
them just say to Doc, Line is back. You're going to center. Create. Get it done,
yeah.
make it happen. Show some frustration. Go out there, play your ass off, be the guy.
So this kind of trickles down even further. Uh, do you even risk breaking up the Anderson Dvorak Gallagher line? Because now you also have to include RHP in this. Where does he go in the lineup to return? Because he's going to have to play a game eventually.
He
Do
will
you sit
eventually.
Armia? Do you sit Heineman?
Both of them right now are playing above what I expect RHP to.
Well, that's the thing. But RHP still because he missed out on playing because he's injured, not because he
Yeah,
was outplayed.
he does, but with what he's brought over the last little bit, I wouldn't take one of those other guys out of the lineup. I know eventually you have to,
Yeah.
but are we seeing the RHP the first year he got in, or are we seeing the RHP when he came in last year, or what are we going to get? If he goes into Laval over these next couple games and he doesn't really light up the world, I'm not taking an NHL player out of a roster to I'm not taking an NHL player out of a roster to give him a position.
And I understand that. I was kind of trying to get to that point right now. So he played in Laval his first game, um, didn't score any points, but he did look good. And he played 23 minutes in a 2-1 loss in overtime for Laval after a 3,000 year long video review for a goal. Uh, it took forever to get that done. So, yeah, his first game back, a little bit of rust makes sense. He put in a lot of minutes, but again, I kind of agree. I don't think he's going to be able to supplant Heineman because that would be the one guy you'd think for sure would be the most susceptible to losing a spot on
Yeah.
in the lines.
I know that he comes with a contract. I know he's got to go through waivers, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But even if I think of the next guy up as a call up, it's Joshua Waugh. It's not RHP. He's not the guy that I think of as the next guy to jump
Exactly.
into the lineup to take somebody's position.
Which is why I'm thinking I know everyone's trying to find a spot for Harvey Pinard once he returns, but I don't think there's going to be one. I think he is going to be the one that gets waived.
It could very well be. It could very well be, and it's a potential, obviously, that he gets picked up, but he's making over a mil, so I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. For a guy coming off of an injury, making that kind of money, and it's one way money. So he's going to be
Right,
making a mill in minors too.
right.
Uh, I just I just don't see anyone picking him up. Like,
But I don't see the spot for him right now.
no.
He's got to show that spark and be that kind of Lavaliger player when we first
Yeah,
kind of saw him. He
exactly.
needs he needs to bring back that identity, because if he doesn't, he's not taking a spot out of somebody right now. And the way, like, he can't kill a penalty like Armia can. Yes, Armia always takes the classic Armia penalty and takes it, 200 feet from his own from the other net. But
Yeah.
um, there are players within the lineup that a while back I could say, yeah, I could see him taking a position for him or something like that. But right now, the guys that are in are the guys that are in, and if a guy like Joshua Waugh can't make this lineup, RHP is.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd even say Owen Beck is above him right now. Barre Boulet is above him right now. There's a like I can't see Barre Boulet, to me, obviously isn't a part of the future,
But he could be
but
plugged into a lineup or even sat in the press
exactly.
box
And the
without
thing
any
is,
worries.
when I look at this team and where I see them in the next couple years, RHP isn't in the lineup either,
No, no, he's
right?
not. And I
RHP for me right now would be a strong top six in Laval.
see he's the kind of guy that if he was
Fringe
still continuing
NHLer.
the way he was playing before, yeah,
Yes, yes,
he would if he were pumped up a little bit, would get you something in return in a trade.
right.
And that's really all it is, just asset management type of player at this point. Um, which is another reason why I think he's going to be moved. He's just going to be waived because Heineman, in my opinion, has supplanted him and several others.
He
Because
has.
you look at it, yeah, Heineman's not scoring a ton of goals. He's got five
But
points.
but he can go out there. He's got a hell of a shot. He plays on the physical side. He retrieves pucks. He knows where to
Yep.
get open. You can put him on a second power play, and at least he's probably going to do something with it,
He can put
right?
on a penalty kill as well, and he
Right.
can do well there in a second penalty kill unit. I mean, he is throwing almost 3 to 4 hits per game.
Right.
He's very physical. He's
Yep.
got the speed. He's got the size. He's the type of player that you want to have for an identity in your bottom
Yes.
six,
Yes.
which again is another reason why I think RHP is bound
I
for
think I th-
Laval
I
or
think it's going to
elsewhere.
be a I think it's going to be quite the knock on him right now, because you're bringing in another 5'9", or you're bringing in another sub 6 foot forward
Yeah.
into a lineup. I just, yes, I can see him 100% being waived.
And as much as he's Lavaliger, he plays like Gallagher in a certain sense. He's not Gallagher. And
No,
there, how many guys can you have who are 5'9", 5'10" in your lineup and still be successful? You still need that
especially
size,
playing a
even if
bottom six role.
yeah, and it's more of a it adds up to a fatigue factor. The smaller guys will get tired out quicker. It's just the way it is.
Right.
Which is why, geez, I don't know. It's not an easy call to make at this point for both of them to come back. Laine clearly he's in, but
He's
the
in.
hard decision there is who the fuck is going to
Who you
play
putting him
center?
with? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to
Uh,
be interesting to see how the lines kind of shape up, and how everyone looks, because we saw where they skated and they haven't made any changes to the lineup. So when we look at how the lines are going to be and how they're going to stay against Vegas, who's a very good team,
yeah, they are.
we might have a little bit of an understanding of who's gonna play where when Laine does come back.
Yeah, and with the Vegas game, like that's coming up tomorrow night, Vegas they've been pretty dominant in the regular season against Montreal, with Montreal being the only team to, out of the only matchup between the two, Montreal won that matchup and won the Western Conference in the playoffs, unlike like other Eastern-based Canadian teams. Um, so, but with Vegas, they're a strong team. They are impressive, and even though unsurprisingly Mark Stone's out injured for long term again, um, the microfracture man, even if he's not in the lineup, that team is really good. So
There.
I'm expecting a really tough matchup. If they can play the way they did against Edmonton, uh, that would make for a very, very good game. And
Well, you're
I
also
do
looking at a
honestly think they
matchup.
could win.
You're also looking at a matchup of two goaltenders that could be on the radar for the Four Nations. The way both of them have been playing um, lately, let's just say that both of them could be in contention for that one of those positions.
Yeah, and that's been the knock on these goaltenders thus far, is that they
And
haven't really
we
been
could say that about most Canadian goaltenders this year. Nobody
true.
has really jumped up and said, "Okay, I have a secured spot."
No, because
Goaltending
they've
in
all
Canada
had
has
up and down
fallen
times.
off a cliff.
Well, it can't be the greatest in the world at all times. There's gonna be some tripping. With the goaltending that we've had over the last 30 years, some of them are gonna get older. There's gonna be a bit of a lapse. I expect to see some more stars come out soon. But yeah, right now, um, slim pickings.
It is.
But you're right. I think that's the added motivation there in that game. It's going to be the two goaltenders dueling it out as best they can. And I, Montembeault in that last week, those last three games, I mean, he's what, a 960
He's
save
looked good.
percentage there?
He's
He's
looked
looked
good,
really
but
good.
the team in front of him have been playing a good team defense to allow him
Yes.
to see some of these shots and to make things a little bit easier on him. And we're seeing
Yeah.
guys that I think it's funny that I'm going to say this, but you a guy the size of Jackeye being timid, but he was very he was I'm not gonna say slow to react, but it was like his reaction of what to do was more. It
Yeah.
wasn't. It wasn't a
Indecision.
reaction. It was decision making, and he didn't want to come out of the lineup. He didn't want this. He didn't want this. Didn't want this. Now that he's in the lineup and he's kind of staying in the lineup, you're seeing the player starting to develop that much more, and
Yeah.
that's boding well for the entire defense,
Well, with
right?
him and Struble on that third pair, you've got two big, strong,
Yes.
physical guys who can
Yeah.
really punish the opposition,
Yeah. You got Gooley playing on his natural side now.
which he played left against the Oilers. And wow, what a difference. Like you watch him from his first few games coming back to the game he played against the Oilers. Unreal.
Right.
It's fitting that he is in that core four uh,
Yeah.
under 24 from
Right.
TSN, which we're going to talk about in the next segment. But unbelievable play. Like this is a kid who, sure, he's not going to score you 50, 60 points a year, but this is a guy that'll play on your top pairing
Yeah.
reliably
Yeah.
and
He's
eat
gonna
minutes.
prevent somebody else from getting those points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's his skating. His skating is unreal.
Right.
Um, all right. So we talked about a few items here in this first segment. We're going to take a quick little break. And when we come back, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about that core four under 24. And we'll see if, Craig Button knows his stuff. He does. So stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Habs Unfiltered. This episode we moved on to segment two, and in this segment we're going to talk about the top four core under 24 from TSN. So they took all the 24-year-old players that they for each team, put them together, rated them, and then they rated the teams. And surprisingly to some, but not to anyone who's been watching the Canadiens and their drafting, Montreal's at the top of their list. So they've surpassed other teams like San Jose, Ottawa, who've been drafting extremely high for a long time. Um, Unsurprisingly, Toronto's at the very bottom because they've been trading these guys. It's it goes without saying, like they're actually trying to win right now. So anybody who wants to crap on the Leafs because they're low on this list is forgetting that the Leafs are an actually good hockey team right now and
Toronto's
have
actually 17th on the list. I don't know how.
yeah.
They're
I,
17th. I don't know how they're 17th.
how does Toronto Sports Network do that? I don't know.
Craig
I
knows a
mean
lot more than
TSN.
what Craig knows a lot more than what we do, and
Yeah,
he does
yeah.
have Nyes, Cowan, Grabankin on the list, guys that all have like
Or
Cowan's got a
yeah,
pretty good chance. Yes, Nyes in the
I
lineup,
guess they're
etc.
okay.
I still think 17 is a little bit high, but that'll have to be a
True,
conversation we have with him.
but even if they were 30th, it
Right,
doesn't matter really at
right.
this point because they're all in,
They
as the kids
definitely
these
are.
days say.
Yeah.
They
But if
got the
you
Riz.
before we get into Montreal, I'll say the bottom four teams, and you can probably think why they're the bottom four teams. So at 29, Florida, Boston's 30, Pittsburgh's 31, and Tampa's 32. What have all those
Yeah,
teams done
yeah.
in the last X amount of years? They have said we're all in, and it's worked out for some of them, some more than others, and now they're picking up the pieces.
Well,
Especially
speaking of
Pittsburgh.
pieces,
Especially
and
Pittsburgh.
Boston.
And Boston just fired one of the best coaches to coach in the last X amount of years.
Yeah, yeah. But oh well. Um, we're gonna look at the top, the very top, the tippy top, the pinnacle of this list, and that's the Canadians. So, excuse me. So what they did was they provided grades to these players. So double A, is elite. A is a top line player. B is a top six player. And the Canadians have a lot of A's and B's, but at the very top of their list. So they got 10 players that they've listed on this site, rated a double A to B. And there may be others in the system. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So we'll just start off at the very top, the double A's. That's Caulfield and Demidov. So you got a Caulfield who's on pace for nearly 60 goals this year. We know why. He's listed as a double A. He's proving it. Demidov is the other one. He is only 18 years old. He was just picked fifth overall. And it doesn't seem like he's getting a fair shake over
He's
in
not.
Europe.
He's not. And I think reason to that is they know he's coming over to North America.
Oh, yeah.
This is a double A
100%.
player, and the way that they have this written is if you're double A, you're an elite. If you're a triple A, you're a
Yes.
superstar. This is a player that at 18 is a double A and elite that could see one day jumping into triple A and being that superstar caliber player.
He's that type of player that the Canadians have been missing in their prospect pool.
Yes, and I know that when he was picked, we all did a quite a celebration when they finally went out and they got somebody like this. But yes, as you said, it's a damn shame that he's not getting that opportunity in Russia because it doesn't really seem what he does. He was the rookie of the month, and it was like here's the fourth line, enjoy.
He had four
And
point game, and then he got
right,
ended up on the fourth
and
line next
right,
game.
and then when all I can see his face. Kuznetsov went down with the injury,
Yeah.
and then the line started shuffling a little bit. Then Kuznetsov came back, and it was like, okay, he's back on the line. Well, that's changed again. This kid's averaging 11 minutes a game, and he's got 20 points
Yeah, he's only 3 points
with
back of the team lead.
with barely any power play time. The six goals that he has are all at even strength.
Yeah. I
So
think he's got one assist on the power play or something like that.
I'm not 100% sure. But like
Either
this,
way,
like he's not getting the fair shake. But
no.
end of May 2025, his contract in Russia is over. Welcome to Montreal. right? It's it's
It's
it's he's not staying in Russia.
no, no, and he's turned down what 4 or 5 contract offers, which is clearly why they've got him playing so few minutes. It's kind of
Yeah,
like a punishment.
yeah,
You
they
know,
know he's
if you
leaving.
want to play more, sign this.
Well, it was even like Mitchkov, and I'm not getting into the comparison of the two players. I'm saying contract wise, Mitchkov wasn't getting the time, the team that he was playing, so they gave him to another team.
That they could do that because he wasn't in the expiring year of his
That's right.
contract.
They were like,
He broke
here,
his contract
yeah,
and went to the NHL.
yeah, but they were like, here, go to another team where you can get some playing time.
Yeah. And on that team, he was doing what, 20, 25 minutes
Well, whatever,
a
yeah, he was,
night? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And he finished the season with what, 41 points?
I don't know, something like that.
Now, if you look at the projections for Demidov, who is currently, as you said, averaging 11 minutes a night, he's on pace to outscore Mitchkov. And this is not to compare the two players. It's just to say Mitchkov is being used as a benchmark, as this really, really good offensive player from Russia. Well, if you're going to compare Russians, let's compare Russians. And as good as Mitchkov is, Demidov is looking to be a little bit better
A step better, yeah,
offensively.
yeah,
Yeah, and he's out producing him, playing half the ice time. So
right,
that's got to say something.
yeah,
At the very least, it highlights why he's a double A.
right. So the other one, a double A, Cole Caulfield.
Yeah, yeah, he's on pace for 60 almost. So he's proving that he is an elite player. Thankfully.
Do you know
But
what? Like,
moving,
like I'm not one of those. I'm not a kind of, let's just say a spiritual person. And then, but like, he changes his number. He puts his nickname for Goudreau, like for what Goudreau called him. He writes that on his stick, and now all of a sudden, and he's shooting less, and all of a sudden the puck's going in the net more and it's finding him more.
no
Number
kidding. I'm gonna go.
change, right?
I'm
Like,
changing my number now.
right? Like something's going on there, and like I'm happy. I really am. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I think he's a year removed from that surgery. He's got a little bit more confidence. He is playing a little bit more emotional, but he's not just scoring goals. You look at how he's playing; he's more complete. Like
Right.
he's out muscling players who are twice his size. Like the game against the Oilers, he beat
Drysdale.
Draisaitl to the
He's the
puck,
one that
threw him
yeah.
off.
Yeah, he's the one
Like it
that
just
he's the one that caused the goalie goal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As shitty of a goal it is for Picard to give up on that short side on Goolie's shot. Goolie's shot was actually pretty good. It was accurate, solid. Yes, Picard should have had that, but whatever. It went in. But that doesn't happen unless Caulfield does the second effort, pins his guy on the boards, separates him from the puck, then takes a step away from that player and creates that opportunity.
Right.
And that's what he's doing more and more of this season. So he's a more complete player, which helps, especially on a team that desperately needs these goals. And you look down further on this list. You got Slavkovsky, Hudson, Fowler, and Gooley are all A's. Now Fowler's not even in the league yet, but I mean, you listen to Pierre McGuire, who is his number one fan.
Yeah.
He believes this kid's the real deal.
Yeah.
You look at
So
Hudson,
in
who's got 20 games in the NHL, and he's already going to be supplanting Mike Matheson,
right. So an A listing per this list is a number one goalie, top pair defenseman, or first line forward,
which is a pretty good player.
which is a pretty good player. For Montreal
So
to
you've
have
got,
two on the defensive side,
yeah,
yeah,
says a lot.
yeah,
Now you've got Slavkovsky, who's the other first line player, and I mean, he's going to be that guy. He's going to be
he
that
will be.
big power forward who can play on a top line. What you're going to notice through this list, though, is there's a name that's missing, and that's Suzuki, who literally turned 25 in August.
Right.
So you've got 20, you got a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 20-year-old. That's your top line.
Yeah.
That's going to be a top line for a long time.
And they're all signed to
Long-term deals.
long-term deals. Yeah.
Now you go to the defense that you mentioned, Hudson and Gooley, both left-handed, but both are considered top pairing guys.
Yeah.
And Hudson, like I mentioned, he's got like 20, 21 games in the NHL, and he's already supplanting Mike Matheson. Statistically, at the very least, they're almost identical.
Yeah.
He can take on a ton of minutes. He can play the power play, even though they haven't really let him do it as much.
You think almost 20 games in that they would have seen it by now, but unfortunately not. Matheson got his first goal the other day on Shea Weber night, and he did it with a slapper. So now all of a sudden he's like, ah, you get another 20 games.
Yeah, it's pretty much. But when you think about it, these two guys, yes, Gooley's that he's got amazing skating skills. He's got
He
great
does.
speed,
And he can do it, he can
physical,
do it in both directions.
exactly, and on left
Insane.
or right side as well.
Yeah.
But and he's not going to give you a ton of points. Whereas Hudson, he's that new, modern, prototypical point producing defender. He's like a rover out there. Although his
Right.
defense isn't that bad
No.
when you all things considered. Yeah, he's got adjustments that he has to make, but again, he's only played 21 fucking games in the NHL.
Right.
He's only 20 years old. So the fact that he's already at the top of the list, yeah, um he's going to have some issues with certain parts of the game, but not everyone's a perfect player. That's
Of course.
why. That's why they,
Patience. Patience is
yeah,
the word that we're going to continue to use. I should just put it like up on the wall here. Patience.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now the rest of the lineup that in this list, they're all B, so they're all considered top six, top four. None of them are in the NHL yet. Some of them do have NHL time. So you have Michael Hage who's in Michigan, centerman. He's got NHL size. He's already leading Michigan as a true
So
freshman.
nine points, 9 games, 5 goals.
Five of those are
Yeah.
goals, yeah, and three of those are game winners, and he
Yep.
assisted on another game winner.
Yep.
Um, then you have Joshua Roy, who's on, I think he's on pace for close to 50 goals in the AHL.
I think he's got. I'd have to look, but he's doing very well. He's got
Yeah,
13 points in 15 games, something like that. He's doing well. And he was a surprise cut. We talked about him in the last segment. But I think he needed the wake up call, and he's taken it, and he's done very well. And I believe he'll be the first call up if something does happen.
I agree. And now that takes us to the bottom, the next two, the ninth and the 10th overall on this list, which just so happen to be right-handed defensemen, which pairs very well with the other left-handed defenseman we mentioned earlier, and that's Logan Mailloux and David Reinbacher. So Reinbacher's out injured, and of course, because he was picked ahead of Michkov, there's a certain segment of the fan base that absolutely despises this kid for some stupid fucking reason. Um, anyway, so while this kid, even though he's out hurt, whenever he comes back, my expectation is we're going to see essentially a right-handed Caden Gooley,
Yeah, I can see that
essentially.
just with maybe a little bit more offense. Or
A little less speed.
you mean Reinbacher.
Yeah, yeah, Reinbacher. A little less speed,
Yeah.
about the same offense,
I need to see
but a guy who
like
can eat a ton of minutes.
I want to see more from him, but it's hard when he's injured. Like
True,
I
but
liked I liked what I saw when he came over from Swiss
yeah,
and played in Laval. I thought he didn't look out of place, and I was like, okay, let's give this guy some time. Not NHL ready by any means,
no,
but it
no.
was like, okay, he's ready to play pro hockey in the AHL. Let's see what he has. And then all of a sudden he gets injured, unfortunately, and this is going to pretty much be a missed season for him.
Yeah, we're looking at him likely playing at least a half of a season in the AHL next year
Right.
just because of this.
Right.
But over the long haul, we're looking at a guy who's likely to be Lane Hutson's partner, D partner.
He does project as a top four,
Yeah,
but we're just not going to see it until he's healthy. And it's unfortunate because we saw the good year that he had the year he was drafted. And then
Yeah.
the next year it was like, okay, your team is absolute dog shit. And it was. And as soon
They
as
went
he
through
could
three
get out of there,
GMs,
yeah,
let alone coaches.
but as soon as he could get out of there, he was. And then we
Yeah.
saw a little bit of that flash when he made it to
Yeah.
Laval. It's just it's hard to throw a guy, it's hard to project as a fan. We're not seeing obviously as much as what Craig gets to see, and he doesn't. We don't put as much work in as Craig does, and that's why we're very happy to have a guy like Craig, as we can call him, a friend of the show,
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
right? We're very lucky to have somebody like that because we don't have the time to put in to see this kind of stuff with our regular jobs. But it's interesting that he put Reinbacher in there on that list. Um, again, I need to see more. I want to say that that projection is going to be true, but until we get to see more of them, I'm not going to be the guy that does the comparison. Don't want to do it. Mitchkov wasn't the player I want anyway, so I'm not going to do the comparison. Um, but I got to see more. I got to see more. I'm seeing what Mayu's doing. He's got, I think, 12 points in 10 games or something like that in Laval right now. He's putting the puck in the net. He's showing that he's to the point where he's outgrowing that league, but he's not quite ready to be a full timer in the NHL as of right now. But if put in the position, he could play the part if he needed to.
Yes. Yeah,
But
I
they
think
don't want
so.
him, but they just don't want him to be a 6-7. They want him to be a top four that can be on a power play and that kind of stuff, right? They don't want him to be a guy that's in and out of the lineup or playing bottom pair minutes when he can be playing a top four, top pairing role in Laval. So
Now,
I think they're being very smart with his development.
true. I no, I'm not arguing that at all. Um,
Also, a guy that hasn't played a lot of hockey in the last few years.
there's that. Uh, neither one, Mayu or Reinbacher have. And with Reinbacher, when he was drafted, I think they went out of their way to kind of let people know he wasn't drafted to be, the 70-point defenseman. He was drafted to be the the foundation, like a foundational defender, someone who can play in any situation but not cause you any problems. He's not going to
Right,
really put up a ton of points,
right,
but he's going to eat a shitload of minutes, and he is going to stabilize the lineup when he's on the ice, and that's the kind of defenseman they have to see from him. And being injured is not helping, but
no,
over a couple more years, I think we should see something like that. With Mayu, you don't have that stabilizing force. What you have is pure, utter anger and chaos. It's amazing. It's amazing. This kid could put up a ton of points. He's physical. He skates like the wind. He needs somebody like Gooley to kind of stabilize him a little bit to let him do what he does best, and that's find those seams,
right,
move that puck up ice,
right,
and that just having four top four defenders in your prospect pool. Like these are guys that have less than you have two guys who are in the NHL now who have less than 100 games, and then you have two guys down in the minors
yeah,
who will be in the NHL probably next year. Uh, and we haven't even talked about guys like Owen Beck,
yeah.
who, I mean, is he going to be a second liner? Probably not, but he'll play that very important third line role,
Yeah,
center.
I'd be interesting to see if that list continued just for Montreal because
Yeah.
again, the way that they've got everything written on here, if you're a B, you're a tandem goalie, top four defenseman, top six forward. A C is a backup goalie, depth defenseman, or bottom six forward. Montreal doesn't have any C's in their make in like on their ranking list, but I'd be interested to see who he sees as a C.
Owen Protz,
Or
Jakob
could
Dobesh.
but could there be more B's on the list?
Yeah.
They just wanted to be like, okay, here's 10 players.
See, that's the thing. Like even if there were no more Bs, That's still 10 players who are B or above.
Right.
And then you look at their list of players, um, like I just mentioned, Protz, Dobesh, um,
He's going through the
Owen
entire list.
Beck.
Going through the entire list right now, he doesn't put any more than 10 players out for any
There you
team,
go.
right? Some have nine, some have eight, some have seven, some have only have four, right?
Yeah.
But
But if we continue looking at the Canadians in their system, I mentioned Beck on a third line, who's probably going to be that anchor third line center who
right,
every team absolutely has to have.
right.
Um,
Let's look at Jacob Fowler, right? We've talked
yeah,
about defense, left side, right
starter.
side. We've talked about Demidov shoring up that top six, making them that much more dangerous, the potential superstar player that they've been looking for
Mhm.
the longest time. Well, here comes your, I want to say it, I'm not going to throw it out there yet, but this is Carey Price's replacement. This is the guy.
Yeah, yeah. You can kind of say that Montembeault is the Steve Penny of the
Right.
21st century.
He is keeping that spot warm for him because we are seeing a goaltender having an incredible year this season with Boston College. He's 7-1 with three shutouts. He's got a 943 save, a 1.55 goals against, and he smacked the shit out of somebody with a blocker the other day. A la Carey Price and got a 1 game suspension for it.
Only because it's college. If that was pro hockey, he would have been given a friggin' game star.
Well, there you go. But
Yeah,
like we met the kid in Nashville. We met his
yeah,
family. He is just such a nice like such a nice young guy,
yeah.
and
As long as you're not in his
he
crease.
yeah. But he's got the size. He's got the positional play. He has the mental confidence. He is just but like he is very what's the word I'm looking for? He is just he's happy to be there. He's happy to put in the work. He loves the pressure. He loves playing in that high pressure environment. And well, going to a original six team, playing in front of thousands of fans at the Bell Center, that's probably about as much pressure as you can get. So I can't wait to see this guy in Montreal. And the thing is they've got a lot better at looking at development of players and not pushing some of these guys. We're seeing it on the standings because these guys aren't here yet, but when they are, the standings will also change.
Yes. And when you look back at the draft year in Nashville, the 23 draft, you watch that pre-draft show that the Canadians put out afterwards to show everybody how they came to their
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah,
The argument over which goalie to pick came down to this kid is extremely technically sound. He's got a lot of skill. He's big. And then the other side was we've got this one kid who will just win. He
right.
does everything to win. And they went with that kid.
You know what
Fowler is that kid.
I'm really we're not gonna know. That's the thing. I'm really
Not until he plays.
I No, no, no. I'm wondering who the other goaltender was that maybe they were talking about because a hell of a lot of goaltenders went right around that time because we were
Yeah.
looking at each other at the draft and just in the second round, you had Gajan, Harabel, Augustine, Carson Bjarnson, Damian Clara all went before Fowler.
I think just the fact that they were hinting at the size is Robble. I think they were talking about Robble.
Yeah, but
But
he
this is
was
just a guess.
but he was supposed to be the first goalie that went. He went number two. He went
Yeah.
second goalie.
Yeah.
As Adam Gajan from Slovakia was the first goalie to go.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering because the pick that they made, Harabel went 38 and Fowler went 69.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering like was there another one in there? Were they looking at Augustine? Were they looking at Carson Bjarnson, who was the top rated Canadian goalie
Yeah, and
who
he's
ended up
another one
going to the
that had some
Flyers.
size.
Yeah,
So if they
who
were
ended
to
up
talk
going,
about,
yeah.
yeah,
So it's hard to
it's
say.
possible.
It wasn't Hampton Slugnutsky, I'll tell you that. I still love that name.
The greatest name ever.
Oh, such a good name. Such a good name. I love it so much.
And and Fowler, he let out his Slugnutsky when he punched a guy in the face
Yeah,
with his blocker.
I
He
have to look
slugged
at
him in the
his
nuts.
I have to look at his stats. Keep going. I'm
See
bringing
where
up this kid's I'm bringing up this kid's stats right now.
Slugnutsky. Okay, tell us where's Slugnutsky now?
I want to see where he's at. Just give me a second. Hampton. If I look up the word Hampton, there's going to be only a couple people on here. Okay. He is playing for Western Michigan University,
Okay,
and he is 4 games in, 1.74, 9.44 save with these two 1-1.
pretty good.
Last year he played for the Fargo Force in the USHL, was 28-3 with a 1.86 goals against, 923 save and 5 shutouts. And in the playoffs he played 12 games with a 1.69 goals against and a 931 save with 1 shutout. And he went in the fourth round, 118th overall to the Kings. And I remember finding his name because he was in the US development program, kind of hid because he was like a third goalie for them. And I
Exactly.
remember bringing him up on the show just because his name was fun to say. And well, he's putting up some pretty big numbers, right? I saw his high school numbers and he was 28, 1-1 with 9 shutouts. And I'm like, I don't really look at high school stats, but like
Bad.
I'll take a
It's
look
not
at
bad.
I'll take a
Yeah.
look at this guy a little bit. And he played really well at the Hlinka Gretzky and all that kind of stuff as well. And he was on my list. So was Fowler. I remember looking at you when he got picked, and I was like, if they're going for a goalie, they're going with that kid out of was it Youngstown? Youngstown
Slugnutsky.
Phantoms. And yeah, I was like, if they're bringing a goal, like if they're picking a goalie, it's Fowler, and I'm very happy that they made that decision.
Yeah, and when we met him, he was younger and
Yeah,
he hadn't quite taken to the uh, athletic training side of the game yet,
right.
and you could tell. And but since I've met him since, and wow, what a difference! The
Yeah,
kid is in way better shape. He's more, but he's still that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid. He's still
yeah,
got that bounce in his step. He's still got
yeah.
that gleam in his eye. So
Right,
that's good. Um, but anyway, we're going to move on because we only have a few more minutes left. We'll go to their core four top 50 list.
right.
And the Canadians actually have two guys in the top 10 there, obviously Demidov and Caulfield. Um, and it's actually not a bad list.
Yeah,
The Canadians are the only team with two players in that top 10.
yeah.
And then they have a few others in that top 50.
They do. So I'll throw the list up really quick. I'm gonna throw the top 10 out really quick just so you can tell some of the players that they're in there with. So at 10, Demidov, Mort Siders at 9, Caulfield's at 8, Mitchkov at 7, Brock Faber at 6, Owen Power 5, Stutzel 4, Celebrini 3, Connor Bedard 2, and Jack Hughes number 1. In terms of the Montreal Canadiens, um, as well as the two that I just named. They have Yuri Slavkovsky at 25, Lane Hudson at 27, Jacob Fowler at 40, who's never played a game of pro hockey yet, and he's still on that list, so that's saying something about him. And Caden Gooley is 46.
Okay. Well, that's six players in the top 50 for the Canadians, and two of them aren't even in the NHL yet. You mentioned
Yeah,
Fowler. The other one's Demidov, who's in the top 10, and
yeah,
he's the only one in the top 10 that's not in the NHL,
that's right.
which
Yeah, then
again, kind of
well,
the
the
reasons.
next one down that would be close is Alexander Nishkin, who's a
Yeah.
very offensively gifted defenseman from the Carolina system. He's 23 years old though,
Yes.
right? The next highest one that's around that same age range is Ryan Leonard, who's a
Yeah.
Washington draft pick, who's 19 years old, who is a teammate of Jacob Fowler, who
exactly.
we wanted them to pick up the draft, but we'll just not get into that
Yes.
right now.
Yeah, this whole Mitchkov Reinbacher
Yeah,
debacle issue
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
we're
yeah,
not part of that.
yeah. On this show, that's not what we were talking about.
No. No, we were talking about Leonard, but not that we're upset about Reinbacher.
Yeah,
Anyway, moving on. Um, yeah, so six guys in the top 50
that's
under
nothing to sh
24.
yeah, it's pretty impressive.
That is impressive. And when you think about the future that it could give the Canadiens, sure, they don't have a Connor Bedard coming
No,
up, but they do have an Ivan Nevidov
yeah.
who looks like he's going to be, one of those really dynamic type of offensive players, like a Kovalev.
We look at this list and like these guys are only going to move up this list.
Yeah,
Some of them are
should.
going to, some of them are eventually going to age out, but like Caulfield will, he turns 24 next year, but these other guys, they're going to, whether they make their debut or not at the pro level as a, they're only going to get better. Right. Yeah. Just preach patience with this team. It is very hard to do as a fan, especially a fan of the Montreal Canadiens. Um, to see where they went to the cup final, but you got to remember what happened after the cup final. You lose
So
your top pairing defenseman, you lose your
yeah,
top goaltender, and it imploded. It really did. And it wasn't any fault of their own. It was just, life happened to these guys.
yeah, they lost 3, 4 guys to injuries, like key guys. They lost a couple others to free agency. The team had that the Stanley Cup hangover, and then it just spiraled.
Right.
But you were talking a little. You're talking about the patience that the fans are going to have. So you've got, Demidov, Hage, Fowler, all these guys that are coming up. Um, they're not going to be ready for a couple of years yet. They won't even be in their prime for, let's say, 3 or 4 at least. So it brings me to a question I'm kind of thinking of. If the patience is that low, if the Canadians end up with, say, the 10th overall pick,
Right.
do they trade that pick for immediate help, or do they pick a guy and wait another 3, 4 years for him?
Depends on it depends on, as I know we only have a few minutes left here on the show.
Yeah.
For me, it's going to depend on where that Calgary pick is going to fall for that second first round pick, where that's gonna sit, where they end up at the end of the year. Are they going to be a top five? Are they going to be a 6 through 10? Where are they going to end up being when the kind of the names drop or when the placard little cards come up and who picks where? I think that there's going to be some discussion going on because right now, if you look at some of the top guys that are available, obviously number one's going to most likely be Hagens out of Boston. You've got Porter Martone, who's a big right winger who's good at putting the puck in the net, that plays an aggressive game. You got Michael Misa, who's a center winger out of Saginaw, who's scoring right now at over a goal a game. And then you're looking at some very good offensive defensemen that are going to be available as well. And then you start looking at, say, guys that are going to go probably 10 to 15. I'll bring him up just because he plays for Moncton, is Desnoyers.
No, I'm
So
very,
it's
very high on that kid.
right.
Very
So
high.
if you look at what's available, it's hard to say if that Calgary pick ends up being an 11 to 16 pick. I could see them dangle on that one depending on who is available, but it's too early in the season, obviously, to know. We'll obviously know that more into the season, and be sure to check out Puckpedia, and they'll tell you all about that and the contract breakdowns and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. And before we sign off, I just want to make it very clear that I am extremely high on that Caleb Denoyer.
Yeah,
I scout the queue for Draft Pro Hockey, and man, there's a little bit of a push and pull right now to see who's in the top 10. That's going to be coming out very soon with Draft Pro Hockey, and it's going to be in a podcast that's going to be put out at the end of the month, hosted by yours truly. So keep an eye out for that. And that ends it for the show. we only have about a minute and a half left, but I'd like to say again, happy birthday to young Treg, the good-looking Wilson, not Treg, but his son. Um, and to Treg, enjoy your weekend. To all our listeners, again, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Check us out. We're over at Blue Sky now as well. We haven't left any platforms. We're just adding platforms. So if you want to add us on Blue Sky, all of us are there. So give us a follow, and we'll continue the discussion there. But again, thank you very much. And if you're talking about it, so are we.